Elena Moreau is a young historian who conducts research on ancient manuscripts. One day, at an auction house in Paris, she discovers a very old journal with strange symbols on it. The journal belongs to a French aristocrat from the 18th century, and strangely, Elena's name appears in its pages. As Elena reads the journal, she begins to experience strange dreams. In her dreams, she sees herself as a woman living in the past. One night, while whispering a mysterious word from the journal, she suddenly finds herself in 18th century France. There, everyone treats her as if she were an aristocrat named Hélène Beaumont. At first, Elena thinks it's just a dream, but soon realizes that everything feels far too real. Moreover, the events written in the journal have yet to take place, the unveiling of secrets and the inevitable pull. During her time at the Palace of Versailles, while Elena tries to hide herself and find a way back, she unknowingly begins to belong to this world. The bond between her and Gaspard grows stronger. The man she initially approached with skepticism now feels more real to her than anything else. However, the eyes of the night cult begins threatening her, claiming they know who she is. They offer her a choice. Either she will join them, or they will reveal her identity and brand her as a servant of the devil. Upon learning this, Gaspard is determined to protect Elena. Despite the powerful enemies within the palace intrigues, he defends her in front of everyone. Hélène is not a traitor. She is more honorable than anyone you see here, he shouts, testifying in her favor before the king. But Elena realizes that she can no longer maintain this lie. That night, instead of hiding, she decides to tell Gaspard the truth. They meet secretly, and Elena explains who she is and where she comes from. I understand if you don't believe me, but I swear I'm not from here. I come from the 21st century, Gaspard. I had another life there, but I don't know how I ended up here. Gaspard struggles to believe it at first, thinking she might be insane. However, as Elena begins to speak about things no woman could possibly know, his doubts turn into admiration. Elena and Gaspard decide to stay together, no matter what. A love has been born beyond time, fate, and logic. Elena no longer wishes to return. She is willing to live in the 18th century and stay by Gaspard's side. But fate is waiting to remind her of a forgotten truth. As Elena starts reading the journal again, she discovers a section she hadn't seen before. The words written there are horrifying. If you're reading this, it's time for you to remember your true life. Elena is actually a married woman in her own time. Moreover, she has a daughter. The magic of her love for Gaspard suddenly shatters. A veil lifts in her memory, and suddenly her daughter Emma's face appears in front of her. Her husband, Daniel Moreau, a lawyer, also comes to her mind. No, this can't be real. I was a mother. Elena turns to Gaspard. There is concern in his eyes. What's happening, Elena? He asks. But Elena can't answer. Her life, everything she knew, has suddenly hit a dead end. She must either stay here and live as a woman from the past or find a way to return home by remembering her real family. But the big question is, will time allow her to make that choice? When Elena realizes that her life has been built on a lie, she feels the brutal weight of time in her bones. She is no longer just a traveler, but a woman caught between the past and the future. Though she knows in her heart that she wants to stay with Gaspard, the truth won't let her go. Scenes rising from the depths of her memory are breaking her mind like lost memories. Emma's laughter, Daniel embracing her in those old times. But most of all, the emptiness she feels inside. Love. Her marriage to Daniel had long been lifeless. They were together, but they were not truly together. Emma was everything, but her bond with Daniel had been severed years ago. Now she understood this better. The real question was, should she continue living this life? But she has no time to think. That night, she learns that an order has been given to kill her in the palace. It has been whispered in the queen's ear that she has collaborated with the eyes of the night cult. Elena feels death at her heels and realizes she can no longer stay here. There is only one way out, to go back. But does this mean losing Gaspard forever? As Elena searches for a way out, Gaspard stops her. Tell me the truth, he says. What are you hiding? Despite all her fears, Elena tells him everything. That she came from the future, that the past is a foreign land to her, but that Gaspard is the most real thing in her life. Within the stone walls of the palace, this truth whispers softly. Gaspard remains silent for a long time. His expression is hard to read. But then he steps forward, then another step, and finally he stands directly in front of Elena. "You won't leave me, will you?" Elena's answer is as broken as her heart. "I don't know, but time won't give them much longer to decide." Before the doors close, Elena must make a choice. Elena's words hang in the air. "I don't know." This is the greatest betrayal Gaspard has ever heard. She had told him she loved him. He had felt it in every look, in every breath. So how could she speak so uncertainly now? Gaspard steps back. "You told me you loved me." His voice is angry but filled with deep vulnerability. Elena closes her eyes. She does love him, but she can't stay here. Staying here would mean death. Staying here would mean completely forgetting Emma. But leaving him would mean losing Gaspard. She approaches him quickly. "I love you," she says. "I love you, but I can't stay here. They'll kill me, Gaspard. The palace doesn't want me. I don't belong here." In Gaspard's eyes, anger gives way to pain, but still he refuses to let her go. "If you're going," he says, his voice almost a whisper, "if you're leaving me, you can't say it like this." Then he grabs Elena's wrist and pulls her toward him, not with anger, but with passion. The air between them is so heavy, neither of them can breathe. "Look at me one last time," Gaspard says, "and tell me you want to leave. If you say it looking into my eyes, I won't stop you." Elena's heart is racing. She places her hands on Gaspard's chest, and the emotions rising within her nearly take her breath away. Every fiber of her being is begging her to stay with Gaspard, but deep in her mind, there's Emma's face, her daughter's laughter, the way she hugged her in bed. How could she leave her? She lifts her eyes to Gaspard. Gathering all her strength, she whispers, "I have to leave." Gaspard's expression changes at that moment. It is as though all the light inside him has gone out. "All right," he said, but his voice was no longer familiar. Elena's hand reached out to him involuntarily. "Gaspard, Gaspard shook his head. "Don't silence me, Elena. You made your choice." Then he suddenly moved closer and kissed her with such passion that Elena's knees gave way. This kiss was a farewell. It was filled with endless longing, but there was also helpless anger. It was the last struggle of a man who couldn't accept the reality of losing Elena. And then he let her go. He turned his back and walked away, as if he were leaving forever. Elena wanted to collapse onto her knees in that moment, but she didn't have time. In a few hours, the doors of the past would close. If she didn't go back, she would die here. But if she left, she would lose him forever. Would time really allow her to make that choice? And the only question echoing in her heart, would she ever see Gaspard again? Elena took a step to follow him, but at that moment, she heard the sound of footsteps echoing through the palace corridors. They were coming to take him. Suppressing the pain in her heart, she turned towards one of the oldest passageways in Versailles, searching for the key to return. Just like she had written in her journal, she was looking for the point where the moonlight should fall. As she descended deeper into the palace, the breath of time became palpable. The walls seemed to close in on her, as if the past never wanted to let go. But Elena didn't hesitate. She had to go back. Just as she was about to complete the ritual, the palace guards caught her. "Stop! Take her!" Before she could scream, someone grabbed her arms, but it wasn't a guard. It was Gaspard. "If you're leaving, I can't let you go like this." Elena saw the pain and determination in his eyes. Gaspard had come to save her, but while doing so, he knew he was about to lose her for real. A moment of emptiness, a fleeting time fracture. And when Elena opened her eyes, she found herself in her own time. When she opened her eyes in the 21st century, everything looked the same, but nothing was the same. Emma's laughter still echoed in her mind. Her husband Daniel asked her questions. Her friends thought everything was normal. But Elena felt like she was floating in emptiness. Everything was in its place, but she had lost the place she belonged. Not a single day passed without thinking of Gaspard. His touch, the words he whispered, his anger, the pain mixed with passion. She couldn't sleep at night. Then one day she decided to visit the Palace of Versailles. While walking among the tourists, she came across an area where an old journal was on display. Her eyes froze. Behind the glass on display, one of the old pages was open. and a note was written. Elena, I waited for you. Signature, G. Elena's breath caught. Had time really passed, or were some loves so powerful that even time couldn't reach them? And at that moment, she decided to find out if there was a way to go back. Elena looked again at the words in the journal. Elena, I waited for you. Her knees went weak. In the crowd, her breath became shallow, and it felt as though the world was closing in on her. Gaspard was here, or at least he had once been here. He had waited for her, but for how long? A year, 10 years, a lifetime? When she thought about it, an indescribable pain rose within her. She had left him behind. She had told him, I have to go. But now she wanted to go back. What did this mean? Her marriage to Daniel had never been perfect. She knew that. But did loving Gaspard mean cheating on Daniel? What about Emma? How could she even think about abandoning her daughter? For a moment, she hated herself. She was a selfish woman. But then, a voice from the deepest corners of her mind rose. You won't leave me, will you? Gaspard's voice echoed in her mind. He hadn't lied when he said he loved her. He had loved her, maybe for the first time in his life, truly loved her, but he had still let her go. Now she was investigating whether there was a way back. What did this mean? Was it an obsession or was it real love? One night after everyone had fallen asleep, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. If I go back, I'll lose everything. She was speaking to herself now. She felt as if she were going crazy, but this was the truth. She would lose Daniel, she would lose Emma, she would lose her entire life. And despite everything, somewhere deep in her heart, she knew she had to go back. She had to make that door open again. But how? Elena had to find a way to go back. But she didn't know how. She couldn't even fully remember how she had crossed that threshold before. She had followed what was written in the journal. But was that really a rule? Or was it just the moment, the mood and the emotions at that time? One thing was certain. The gateways of time didn't just open randomly. She went back to read the journal on display at the Palace of Versailles again. But this time, something different caught her attention. There was a footnote next to the glass case where the journal was displayed. This artifact was taken from a mysterious journal that disappeared in 1752 and reappeared. The author of the journal is unknown, but handwriting analysis suggests it might belong to one of the nobles of the period. The most intriguing part is that some of the pages are still unreadable to this day. Certain words written in blue ink have become invisible to the naked eye. Elena's skin tingled. She had already seen the journal, but hadn't noticed the unreadable pages. What if there was a clue to her return hidden on those pages? It was impossible to contact the historians and museum staff, but there were people in this world who could find things she couldn't through official channels, esoteric researchers. Elena spent hours searching online for a secret group dedicated to researching ancient books and historical documents. There was a community dedicated to solving history's lost secrets, Les Veilleurs. This group studied lost documents related to time, mystical events, and unexplained transitions throughout history. If anyone knew the secret of these gateways, it was them. Elena found an event organized by the group, a secret meeting in Paris. She had to go. When she arrived in Paris, she went to the location of the event, an old bookstore. It looked like an ordinary bookstore, but when Elena entered, she felt a different energy in the air. This was a place where ancient knowledge was discussed. On the shelves were forbidden books throughout history, works by ancient scientists. Even those who didn't believe in magic or spiritual teachings had to show respect for what was written here. Elena took a deep breath and approached the speaker. His name was Lucien Moreau. I want information about the lost pages of the Versailles journal, Elena said. Lucien looked at her for a long time. Then he smiled. So, you believe the gateway has opened? Lucien took Elena to a special section behind the bookstore. There were old documents, maps, and cryptic writings here. They stood in front of a large map hanging on the wall. Lucien opened a dusty book and pulled out an old document. And there it was, a photocopy of a page from the Versailles journal. But the page was blank. Elena furrowed her brow. There's nothing here. Lucien smiled and pulled a small blue glass from his pocket. "The secret of time is sometimes hidden in places our eyes cannot see," he said, holding the glass over the page. And in that moment, the words on the page began to appear. Elena's heart stopped when she looked at the page. There was an instruction there. Time only opens the gateway for those who deserve it. Love and loss are the deepest codes of the soul. The transition opens when the stars align in a certain way, and it can only happen in the right place, with the right heart. Elena read the words with trembling hands. The stars aligning. This wasn't a random transition. It was happening on a specific date, with a specific energy. Lucian turned to her. "What does this mean to you?" he asked. Elena's breath caught. "This is a door, and that door only opens with love and loss. But when? And where? Had the door opened in Gaspard's final look at her?" Elena now knew one thing. If she wanted to go back, she had to find that door once again. Turning Lucian's words over in her mind, Elena was trying to understand the alignment of the stars and the flow of time. Unfortunately, she had realized that this wasn't just a mystery, it was a test. Was she ready to lose everything to return to Gaspard? Love and loss. At that moment, those words took on meaning again. Because losing everything wasn't just about going back. When you truly understand love, there was always a price. Lucian left Elena alone in the room. His eyes held neither hope nor fear. He had simply accepted the games of time. Elena stayed there for a while, alone in the ancient room. She began calculating the time needed for the stars to align. Every night she watched the sky, observing how the brightness of the stars changed. Finally, one night she felt that everything had fallen into place, like a burst of energy. When the clock struck midnight, the stars in the sky began to align in their brightest form. Elena took a deep breath and directed herself toward the palace's ancient passage. Time and love. Maybe Gaspard would accept her back. Maybe everything had a purpose. But at that moment, someone appeared in front of the passage. Gaspard. Elena took a step back. Being in the same place, at the same time as him, felt nothing like anything she had ever experienced. She had waited for him for so long, she didn't even know what to say. "You came back," Gaspard said, his eyes carrying a deep meaning in the darkness. Elena slowly shook her head. "Yes, but now I may have to leave." As Gaspard approached her, his hands grasped hers. "I can't let you go forever," he said. "We have to be together forever. You can't lose me." Suddenly, Elena could feel the moment when time moved. The whole world stopped. Elena and Gaspard had reached the final moments between the doors of time. Elena whispered, tears streaming from her eyes. "But everything has a price, Gaspard. Everything." And in that moment, the door opened. The light of the passage blended with an uncertain darkness. As Elena stepped into it, time seemed to vanish. Everything felt so clear, as though she was stepping into an entirely different world. But would this passage really take her back? Gaspard whispered, "Don't lose me." And at that moment, Elena closed her eyes. In the next video, you will find out how Elena's journey through time will conclude and what will happen to her fate with Gaspard. Perhaps it is just the beginning. What happens at the end of this journey will only be revealed in the next story. If you like this story, don't forget to share it with your friends and subscribe for more content.